For those of you who have been following my series entitled How I Overcame the Lies That I Believed, I'm just going to put a pause on that series for a moment and share an experience that I had recently. So I'm just going to share from my heart. Now, for those of you who know me, or you've maybe watched my previous videos, you will know that 2 years ago, on the 14th of March, 2022, my father passed away. Now, I had a very, very, very close relationship with my dad. And what I didn't share with anybody except my spiritual father and my wife was the fact that I did not cry once since my dad passed away. And when I shared this with my spiritual father, he told me, you cannot force yourself to cry. It just happens when it happens. Because everybody mourns the loss of a loved one differently. Now, in recent months, I've noticed that my blood pressure levels were uncharacteristically higher than normal. And this obviously concerned me. And a while ago, I bought myself a blood pressure monitor to monitor myself. A few days ago, I went to visit my mother. And while I was there, I put my 2.5-year-old to sleep. I do this by putting him on my chest and holding him. And I listened to a song by Guy Sebastian, his latest single called Antidote. It's a really beautiful song. And while I was listening to this and holding my son, my mind just went back to when I was a 7-year-old in 1988. So you can figure out how old I am now. In 1988, when my dad picked me up and put me in the car in the early hours of the morning, and me, my dad, and my mother traveled to Carmel in George. I remember that experience there at Carmel. I think we were there for a week. Was probably the best childhood experience that I've ever had. And I remembered specifically my dad, and when I remembered him and what he did and how caring he was and what an amazing person he was, I just cracked. I cracked right there while I was putting my little one to sleep. Wow, it was like it came out of nowhere. And as I said earlier, I did not cry once since my dad passed away. And that was the first time, it's almost 2 years since my dad passed away, that I just cracked. And after that, I felt such a huge burden that lifted off my shoulders. I felt so light. Before I felt so heavy. I realized that sometimes you carry things that you don't even know that you carry. And because of that, it has a physiological effect on your state of health, which was reflected on my blood pressure readings that was, like I mentioned before, uncharacteristically higher than normal. I was thinking, why is my blood pressure so high? I don't suffer from high blood pressure. I've had that 24-hour monitor on, and the average reading was normal. And a few days later, today in fact, at the recording, just before I recorded this video, I took my blood pressure reading, and I don't take blood pressure medication. I took my reading and it was 120/70. Now, for those of you who understand, I think most of you will understand that that is a very good reading. That's a normal reading. Right there and then, when I was looking at that reading, my mind went back to a few days ago when I cracked and I cried. And the after effects of that was I felt so relieved. I felt like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. And I realized that that was a key factor in the reading that I'm seeing in front of me today. And then I was reminded of the reality that the burdens that we carry, the stress, the fear, the anxiety, the grief that we carry, even on a subconscious level, has a physiological effect on our state of well-being. I was in a state of rest when all those emotions were flushed out, in my tears, and I started weeping. And sometimes we are so busy that we don't have time to process the implications of all the changes and the transitions that has happened in our lives. For example, the loss of a loved one, or just a change in season in our lives, from one season to the next. So I want to encourage you, take a time out, come to a state of rest, and allow the Lord to do what He does best. Like He did with me, I believe He wants to do the same with you.